Hi, today is Thursday the 22nd of June 2017 and I'm going to go on a little walkabout of the garden. The asparagus is busy going to fern. Here's our first carrots. We're about ready to start harvesting them. And here's our second carrots. These are deep purple onions that we grew in groups of about 6 or 7 for spring onions. Here's a variety that this is our first year to use, called White Spear. It is so much cleaner and easier to grow than the deep purple because it is so upright and you can wheel hoe it for much longer, and so therefore it's much easier to keep clean. Here's some red Zeppelin red onions. This is our big greenhouse. I've put Cool Ray shading on the outside of it. It's like a paint that you paint on the plastic to keep it cooler. And I'm going to spray the Cool Ray on the inside to keep the radiation and the heat down so we can start drying our garlic and then our onions in here. Last year I suffered a lot of damage with, lettuce seedlings in the summer because it rained so hard and so often that it just battered the plants. So this year I've got a shaded area here with the hydrated lime worked into a paste and painted on the glass, and then clear glass there. And so after pricking out the lettuce, we put it under the shaded area. Then later we move it to the unshaded, and then later into the full sun, and then later into the garden. Here's our second planting of squash and cucumbers. I'm trying a new cucumber this year called County Line, which is supposed to be resistant to bacterial wilt. But something that's really been helping us out this year is the cucumber beetles didn't come out until mid-June. So sometimes they come out in April. So that's given things a good jump. Also, I decided to raise the plants in larger pots, in 4-inch pots, and let them get bigger. Here's our second bed of beets. This we drilled these with the seeder and then we thinned them and weeded them. Our first bed we've been selling out of for several weeks now, and this is one that we transplanted. Here's lettuce in various phases of development. Here's basil and some shallots, Swiss chard, parsley and kale. So look how well things are going in the squash and cucumber department. Okay, this is Market More 76. This is County Line. Then decided to do a little patty pan squash. This is my first time for doing patty pan. Here's a green one. And then there's a lovely yellow one. Then yellow squash and zucchini. There's Walla Walla onions. So here's our rock garden looking pretty nice. The yucca flowered this year. And the cactus is still flowering. The hen and chicks. And the mandevilla there. We've been doing very well with our little bird nesting boxes this year. There's a tree swallow family living in here. They just moved in yesterday. Here's an Abyssinian banana that a friend of mine gave me last fall, and I overwintered it in the basement. I just love it. I love the color and I love how small it is. And good news this year. For 4 years I've been trying trying to get purple martins to move in, and they moved in early June, and there's a couple of eggs, so things are on the way with the purple martins finally. Here's our bed of garlic. I used advice from Patchwork Gardens this year, and after I put the garlic in, I put a layer of manure on top of the bed, and then before it got really cold, this wasn't part of their advice, but I covered it with a double layer of floating row cover, and I've never had better looking garlic. It's a good size, so pretty happy about that. We'll be retiring this patch of strawberries shortly. Here's some potatoes. Here's a third, fourth, and fifth sowing of beans. Here's some eggplant and peppers, and a volunteer sunflower I didn't have the heart to weed out. And we're busy cutting flowers this morning for market. Here's our first sowing of beans, which were sown in the greenhouse. We've been selling beans at the market for 2 weeks now. And here's, I think, the fourth sowing of dill and cilantro. And the grapes are looking good this year. After a very tough year last year with that very hard frost we had on May 15th. So here's our 70-foot walk-in. There's some early girl tomatoes on the end ready to pick for market on Saturday. This year I decided to do the outside rows, a variety called Frederick, which apparently doesn't need as much space between fruit trusses, so I put it where we don't have as much height. And then I use mostly Big Dina on the inside rows, but I'm also using a Favorita and a Lemon Boy, and this is one called Sant Orange. And this is Sun Gold and Sun Sugar. So here's a flower bed for later. You see the zinnias at the far end, and broom corn, marigolds, frosted explosion, which is an ornamental grass I really like. Sweet William, whatnot. This is mostly celosia in this bed, but there's some celery, and there's some fennel. There's some more celosia, feverfew, sunflowers we sow weekly. Jerry's cherries tomato plants. I need to get some new seeds, so decided to plant 10 plants, and we'll see if we can get some seed. Here we are getting ready for farmers market on Saturday. Sunflowers, status, just snapdragons. I'm trying this one. It was in the Johnny's catalog. Dusty Miller. I'm not quite sure how to use it. Perhaps the leaves get a lot bigger, then you can include it in bouquets. Zinnias, Benary's mix, Sweet William, annual Sweet William. This is a new one. It's in the Johnny's catalog, and I decided to give it a try. I forget what it's called, but yeah, this is the neon series. This is Feverfew Magic Green. I love this feverfew. It holds in the field beautifully. I just love it. And there's Soraya sunflowers we've already cut from. So Things are looking fairly good in the blackberry department. This is Chester. This is Heritage raspberries again, came up nice and thick. Only weeded them once. There's the fruit starting to set. Here's some radishes. And I planted a row of beans there yesterday, and then I filled this area with soybeans. So here's the fish pond and our perennial area. Okay, this is Macrocephalia. Bees just love it. Yucca looks so gorgeous this time of year. There's the fish pond. Lilies, water nice and clear. See if we can see some fish. So here's some rhubarb, some rugosa roses in the background, yarrow, other miscellaneous perennials, horseradish in the back, phlox, other perennials I just put out yesterday. Okay, purple coneflower mixed with a little bit of phlox, which is naturalizing, and larkspur. Haven't tried larkspur for a few years, but looks pretty good. Echinops and Shasta daisies. And here is our weekly sowings, or not weekly, but succession sowings of dill and cilantro. Obviously the taller cilantro is about ready to go to seed, but we decided to leave it because the bees and insects seem to love it so much. I cut back a bit this year, so I have extra room in the garden that I plan to leave fallow. And in April it got really warm. In mid-April, April the 15th, it was warm for a week before and a week after April the 15th. So I decided to put some corn in on April the 15th. And so I sowed 17 rows of bodacious. And I figured if it frosted, that I could irrigate it to try and protect it from the frost. And it frosted on May the 5th, so I irrigated it that night, and it made it. Didn't look very good, but look how gorgeous it looks now. Some of them have like several years on them. I'm very inexperienced with sweet corn, so it's going to be a lot of learning. So here's our September tomatoes, and here's a row of sweet potatoes. A friend of ours, Dick Faust, is helping us in the production of sweet potatoes. He's an expert. Here we are in the hen area. A couple of developments here. I decided to make these contraptions called grazing boxes underneath the eave of the buildings. I want to put them all the way around the pen, but I wanted to do this area first, underneath where the rain comes down. So the idea with it is you sow grass underneath them, and the hens can't scratch out the roots, and as it grows up through the hardware cloth, they eat it. And something else that began to happen last year and is happening even more so this year is pokeweed has come up in the chicken pen, and the hens just love the shade. They don't scratch it out and eat it because it's poisonous, and it's just, look how tall it is. So here's the other grazing box, and look at all the other baby pokeweed about to turn into a pokeweed forest. So there's the pokeweed. I love how with gardening, unexpected things happen that you never would have guessed. And pokeweed is one of those things. So here's another open area. Okay, there's the pokeweed in perspective that I sowed to soybeans yesterday, and we'll see how that works as a cover crop. It was a wonderful winter for the bees. I went in with 9 colonies and I came out with 9, although one was weak, so I combined it with another for 8. So I started off the year with 8, and I've given swarms. I've helped a friend of mine get up and going with a couple of hives, and things are going well. They're making honey like crazy. I love how they're so busy. So here's our first tomato house. I planted these out on March the 31st. I only had to heat it, I think, 1 or 2 nights to keep the frost off. Once again, it's a lot of Big Dina. There's Sant Orange. Isn't it fascinating how cherry and grape tomatoes are so vigorous and so hard to control? It's sending out side shoots all the time. So we just reach a point at about 4 or 5 feet where we just let them do what they're going to do and stop fighting it. Well, thanks for coming along on this little journey, and we'll see you again. Bye.